Warm greetings, everyone. On behalf of Friday Waters, an initiative of the W4W Foundation, a think tank built as Citizens Collective, we welcome you to today's session of Friday Water Arts. Friday Waters is a continuation of our signature series, Wednesdays for Water. The activities in Friday Waters include Water Reading Club, Water Talkies, Water Thesis Club, Water Arts, and Meet a Maestro. Each of these sessions takes place once a month, depending on the availability of our speakers. The idea of Friday Waters is to bring water knowledge available in various alternate forms at one place to highlight the opportunities and challenges related to water. The idea is also to increase the outreach of the alternate water practices in the water networks as well as society at large. They are designed to be fun-filled and yet fruitful to learn about the water matters in a different way. The focus of water arts is to bring different stories through the artists who have done or are doing art forms in order to discuss with them the making of their work and the issues around the subject they have covered and their interest in that art form. Besides bringing the interest in water conversation, this will also intend to increase the outreach of the artwork as well as the artist in the water network and society. My name is Mansi Wal Bhargav, and I'm calling from the House of W4W. And we have Ms. Ruchika Tiku from Goa Water Stories and core team member to take up the moderation of the session for today's Goa Water series. Ruchika Tiku is a former artist and music professional with decades of experience in digital content making and technology. Her interest in indigenous knowledge began with music of indigenous and tribal communities with interest she's carrying into the field of ecology. Welcome back, Ruchika. You know the rules of the game, and over to you. And thank you so much for agreeing to do the moderation.
My pleasure. As someone who's been in Goa for 2.5 years, studying environmental science in Goa was one of the most enriching experiences. It's a biodiversity gem, and it's the one place where culture, ecology, community all are so tightly interwoven that there's no better way to learn it except holistically, which is what my program offered. And when Goa Living Water Museums, through Wenzi Mendes, approached Goa University to sort of, after the fellowship rounds, approached Goa University to also showcase our research, it was exciting. Because Goa Water Stories is produced and mentored by Living Waters Museum, which is a wonderful platform led by Professor Sarah Ahmed, that brings alive different water stories from across the country and now the world, that showcases the water heritage that is connected with local communities, the challenges they face through various different initiatives, along with a platform, water classrooms, eco-entrepreneurship, fellowships like this. And Goa Water Stories is recently launched in March 2025, which basically engages all the local indigenous communities in Goa, which are many. And we've taken a lot of stories from across Goa, blended oral traditions, community knowledge, and along with art. And this wonderful panel of researchers and artists who have come together to showcase it on this platform. With a special focus of indigenous communities' knowledge, which has always been transmitted through the elders orally from generation to generation, which then weaves in rituals and folklores along with the ecological significance of it all. So that's it. Please see the website, Goa Water Stories. It's beautiful. It is multifold. It has many aspects, pictures, stories. It just brings Goa, its ecology and its traditions alive. So I won't take off too much time. I'll move to our first speaker, Minelli Pinto, who is an illustrator, educator, and expressive arts practitioner working at the intersection of art, emotional well-being, and education. And with a background in architecture and training in expressive arts therapy, a lot of her work spans schools, communities, different independent projects, focused on weaving together storytelling, visual expression, and movement to basically create a space for inquiry, reflection, and care. Minelli, over to you.
Thanks, Ruchika. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this conversation. Would we be able to have my presentation up?
I'm showing, okay?
Yeah.
So I guess while Mansi pulls up the presentation, I'll just talk a little bit about why this project, why the rivers. So I think I've always been very connected to rivers. I think some of my earliest memories would have been fishing with my grandfather when I was a child, then to maybe when I was slightly older, swimming across the Mandavi River. And then as a teenager, spending a lot of time at the creek, which is really close to my house. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Nancy.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the river has been a large part of my life, and really wanting to convey this love for the river to, with this work and this project. Um, yeah. So over the last few years, there's been a lot of change in Goa, and I think this came from a space of feeling a little helpless and wondering how I can do my part and really, sort of create an impact as an educator, as an expressive arts therapist. Um, there was this feeling of maybe, I don't know how I can help. So I think this really came as a sort of movement for me to really feel like I can do something, I can really have a voice. And it looks at really the long-term impact of more than like as a prevention over more than, prevention better than cause, sort of rather than to work at a level where we're working on things now, to really start with children, and really inculcate this love for the river, sort of sharing and creating future stewards for, environmental conservation, environmental protection. So really, that's what this project aimed towards. Yeah, we can move to the next slide. So my area of study was the Mapsa River. Mansi? Yeah. So this is basically the area that I decided to study. I just used it as a pilot. There are a lot of rivers in Goa, and in order to really run this project, I thought it would be nice to just zoom in on a smaller area. And this is part of the river that passes through Aldona. And there's this little lending library called Bookworm that was very kind and hosted this program. So this is the location of the river and the uh, and bookworm. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Mansi. So this is what the project looked like, the timeline. So the first part of the project was really moving into the data collection space. I really wanted this project to be very hyper local. So it was the overall concept of the project was to be an SEL sort of emotional learning integrated with environmental learning, sort of looking at the river as a friend. How can we really sort of connect with the river, not just as maybe something that you're seeing, you're sort of disregarding, but something that maybe, what if the river had feelings? What if the river told you that, hey, I like this, or I don't like this? So sort of looking at the river as maybe um, a living, breathing entity, and coming from that space where we sort of really are able to connect with more than it just being something beautiful to look at, to really be able to feel through it. And so the first part of it, since we wanted it to be hyper local, was really to collect data from the area. That is looking at collecting data, myths, stories from the community that lived around the river, mostly about the river, how it impacted the settlement that lived around it. So that's what happened over the first 3 months. Then we moved into a more developmental sort of space where we are looking at the curriculum development, contacting other researchers, facilitators that could help with this program. It wasn't just facilitated by me. I was sort of holding it together. And I really liked the aspect of having different voices coming in and really sharing their insights and their knowledge to help add value to the project. Then over the course of November and December, we ran the project. We had it in 3 stages. Then moving forward from that, then we had the sort of collation of data and like the post-production. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. This is largely what the session structure looked like. So we'd have the session, it would be the first part of the session would be a concept knowledge-based session. Then we'd move into an expressive arts exploration, which sometimes would be creating art, sometimes it would be music, song, dance. So in general, we were using the concepts and our knowledge structure as our base. And then then sort of using the arts as sort of like a fun, explorative way to really learn and cement in whatever we were learning. And then we moved into the sort of, what have we got from this? What are we understanding? What are we learning? Yeah, we can move to the next. So our first session went into looking at the history, geography, basically learning about the river. It was specifically about the river, how the settlement formed, how the river is important. Within the history, the Mapsa River was very, very important for trade, transportation, irrigation in this village itself. So there are a lot of these stars, and there's just so much history around the river, and so much that happened around the river, because it was before the roads, before the bridges in Aldona. The river really was the hub of connection for the village. So really going back into that space and understanding the aspects of how important the river was for the settlement. And then from that, we went into an exploration of if I lived in the river, what would I look like? Or if I was swimming in the river, what would I see? So then sort of looking at if you were inside the river, what would you see? So this was the creation. So we created these little sort of fish and different things that we might see inside the river on plates. And this was a very interesting experience, I think, for me as well. Of course, it was a lot of fun. But I think one of the things that stood out strongly for me was that a lot of with some of the kids, especially some of the settlers and the people who have moved here. So that's the thing. We had a mixed group, so it wasn't just the children, community members' children and local. There were people who had moved in, some settlers, so people from different socioeconomic groups. Just a mixed group of kids that sometimes some frequent the library, some are friends. So we had a whole mixed group for that. And so yeah, so one of the very interesting things that I noticed was this visual disconnect. So there was a lot of marine life, over aquatic life, some sharks and some dolphins and jellyfish, and like things that starfish that you might not normally see in the river. But it was very interesting for me because also some people live closer to the river, some people have experience from the sea. So I think somewhere just sort of that overlap seemed to be there. Yeah, we can go to the next one. And next to the next. Yeah. In the second session, we went to, you can go to this one. So in the second session, we went into myth, story, and song. So one of the song that we were looking at is Hausaiba Poltori Veta, which is a very traditional, it's a dekni. If you haven't heard it, it sounds like Hausaiba Poltori Veta, Da Mulya Lagna Kaveta, Makasaiba Vat Da Koi, Makasaiba Vat Korona. So basically, it's a conversation between a boatman and Damu. This dancer who wants to go to the other side of the river. And back then there were no roads, so a lot of the transportation was done through the river. So it's basically this conversation about this girl telling the boatman that she wants to go for Damu's wedding, she wants to dance there. And the boatman's saying, no, I can't take you. And she's convincing the boatman, please, can you take me? I'll give you my nose ring, I'll give you my anklet. And also this song does have a bit of a negative connotation because of the temple dance aspect. So we did have to sort of change it a little and maybe add a different light to it, since we were also bringing it to the children. So we did, and we sort of made it more, we changed it and created a little story about how there was a goddess that wanted to cross onto the boat and to the other side. And Damu was, it was raining, it was a very, there was a terrible storm outside. So the boatman is a little scared. So then how he overcomes his fear and takes this goddess over to the other side. And then we learned this song. Another interesting thing, and the exercise for this was, of course, we learned the song, we did the dance. A lot of kids really loved the dance and song aspect of it. And the art exploration exercise was basically creating these little boats. So as you can see in the picture, everyone has these little boats that they painted and personalized. What would their boat look like? Um, and then just learning the song. Then we also opened it out to there were some older children. So if you see the pictures, there's Harrison, who's telling us a story about the crocodiles in the river. It's this big. So it's just basically stories that had come from maybe the slightly older kids, new stories that their parents had told them about the rivers they were sharing. So it's really a lot about storytelling, and, the experiences. What is your experience of the river? And that's how this session went. And also, so within this session, one of the interesting things was there was the language disconnect, I think, stood out for me. A lot of the children weren't really comfortable speaking Konkani. They didn't really know this Dekni, which is actually quite a popular song. I think growing up in Goa, I learned this song, I learned the dance to it. Um, so it was interesting because I was finding these little disconnects everywhere about within the kids itself, growing up here with having like sort of these gaps in these stories, in these sort of songs, in these things that maybe I thought was which was knowledge that for me that had been passed down, a lot of oral tradition and a lot of like sort of things that were not so much things that I didn't learn so much in from books, but from like maybe my grandmother telling me stories or singing it in school. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. And next. Yeah. We can go to the one after this. Oh no, before this. The picture slide. So basically, the session 3 was more of a community session that we brought. No, I think it's after this. Yes. Thanks, Mansi. So yeah, session 3 basically was not just children. We brought in community members, we brought in parents. So it was a bit of a mixed group. Mansi, the previous one with the people sitting in a circle.
Do you see it?
Yes, this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically with this session, what we were looking at is really being with the river, because we've talked about it, we've sung about it, we've learned about the biodiversity, but what is it to really be present on the banks of the river? So this was largely just really being present. So the first session was just sort of sitting, listening. What can we hear? What can we smell? What can we see around us? A very sensory exploration of, what does it feel like to be here by the river? What does it feel like to sort of smell? What does the river smell like? It smells a little fishy. It smells like this. What can I see? I can see some fishing boats. I can see waves. So really being present, and I think what happens is today we're so sort of we're just constantly like, I think, stuck in our minds when it comes on our phones, and we sort of tend to lose the essence of really being present, and especially being present in nature. So that's what we were trying to bring back in this session, just really moving back into the space, enjoying that feeling of hearing the water waves, hearing the birds around the river. And for the session, we wanted to create ephemeral art. So like the banks of the river where things move up and down and like everything is in flow, everything's in transit. This art piece also was something that could be brought together and then disbanded. So what we did was, it was the collection of the art of the last 3 days that we had done, and we sort of really brought it together in a very organic form, singing and dancing, and it was really a space of community coming together and really singing as a community, dancing as a community, and really something beautiful about sharing the same space across generations. Um, so we had two really wonderful facilitators, Shafali and Joan, who brought in the mindful aspect of it, and just really slowing us down, helping us be present. And then we opened the session up to storytelling. So a lot of the elders that were there, the parents, people who had grown up in the village, they shared stories of the village and like how when they were younger, they didn't have school buses, they'd cross via the bus, the boats. For funerals, they put coffins on the boat and the whole funeral procession would travel via the river. So I think there's so many interesting stories that were exchanged that even in my data collection that I had missed out some of these oral stories. So I think that was so interesting to me. And I think one of my insights that came up from this session was really that it's so important to create spaces of dialogue um, where different generations can share, because as this sort of gap grows, we are losing so much knowledge between generations because there's things that are just not passed down in textbooks, in books. And I think in order to really be able to share that knowledge, it's also important to share those spaces. And I think it really helps with this rootedness within ourselves to also be able to connect with who we are, where we're coming from, um, what is around us and what is so important about it, and why we need to love it and respect it and really take care of it, because it might not be there forever. So I think that's what I was left with this whole experience. It was really lovely working with some of the other facilitators who were um, in this journey with me. We had Snigdha on the first day, who did a lot of the the science perspective, the biodiversity perspective. On the second day, we had Keith and Priyanka, who helped the storytelling and the music part of it. On the last day, we had Shifali and Joan with the mindfulness. So it really felt like a collaborative community effort where we had so many people coming together to really sort of share this space of learning and um, loving for the nature. So we can go to the next slide,
Right.
the slide after the next. So this is just a collection of the art that was created. And I think that's about it. This last slide is just basically the project. This project ended, but I think I really took it forward in personal work because it really had a huge impact on me. So I think a lot of my work is sort of still very nature centric, very river centric. So this is some of the things that we've continued with other groups, other different ages, and I think it's really rewarding because also as humans we are also 70% water. So really the river is uh, so much like us, and we flow so much like the river. And I think just learning to
Yeah.
flow like the river could really help us.
Beautiful.
That's it from me.
Thank you, Minali. Lovely to see you connecting people, especially children, more personally with water through art. And I love that part where you talked about if you were in the water, because a lot of natural landscapes have now become things we look at as external images rather than realizing that we're part of that ecosystem. So this is a wonderful way, and I can just imagine that hopefully this has impacted the kids enough to go back and check, oh, the river is different, the sea is different, even something as basic as that is still to be
Yeah.
unveiled. So lovely. Thank you so much. We'll quickly move to the next speaker. Just a little request on the time slot, since we're a little short, to try and see if we can keep it within the 10-minute per speaker window. I'll introduce our next speaker, Velzina Rodriguez, who has a background in botany and education. So what a wonderful marriage, because with a love for plants and all that curiosity about their intricate workings, being an educator can make her actually transmit this knowledge, which most people tend to find boring because botany tends to go into taxonomy. I'm sure she's found a wonderful way to communicate, showcase the beauty of plants, and also through that, sort of take forward the conservation narrative and awareness narrative. So, as she says, for her, connecting people, especially the young, with nature, is perhaps the first step towards preserving it. And that's so true. And she'll be joined by Ria D'Souza, who has been a part of this, a lot of our talks, so doesn't need another introduction. But as an architect with a lot of experience, she's working and focusing on conservation, restoration, and repurposing materials. So over to you all. Just a request to keep the timeline in mind. Thank you. Yes.
Just
Over to
because
you.
I'm in a bad network area,
No
I'm
worries.
going to switch off my camera so that
No worries.
the streaming is better. But to have a face to the name, this is Velcina.
But Velsina, we are yet to see us. Yes, it's come.
Yes.
Yes. The name of my project is the Dudhsagar Kandapar Chronicles, and this is where it is located on the website. So the Dudhsagar Kandapar Chronicles is a collaborative bookmaking initiative that it brings together local knowledge, artistic engagement, and environmental education to promote river conservation. This project
No,
was a part
we are not hearing.
of the
Velsina, we are not
Goa
hearing you clear.
story.
Ruchika, you are on mute, and Velsina, we are not hearing you clear.
I'm wondering if her network is slow. Would it help if somebody else shared it?
I can share. Velsina, if you can just speak, that I think that will help.
Yeah, maybe it'll help your network.
You may close the screen sharing. Can you stop sharing the screen, please?
By LWM.
Okay, please confirm if you see the screen.
Right.
No, your voice is still breaking. We don't hear you clearly.
No worries. Should we
Of
Yes, you please take the next speaker, and then we'll
watercourse,
see
which
how
is the
to fix
Mandovi
Velsina.
River, which you see on.
Okay, you can just stop
Velsina, we are
sharing.
not hearing you clear.
We'll just move to the next speaker.
Am I
Hopefully
audible now?
Yes. Hello? I think you're on mute, Velsi.
Not yet.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Now,
So
can you hear me now?
Can you speak the introduction part a bit, start so that we can test again?
Yes. So Dudhsagar, the Dudhsagar Kandapa Chronicles is a collaborative bookmaking initiative that brings together local knowledge, artistic engagement, and environmental education to promote river conservation.
okay.
You have to
Our
also
project,
guide me to navigate the slides.
yes, I shall. Our project is part of the Goa Water Stories, which is a series initiated by LWM. Next slide, please. Yes. Our project follows the course of the Panjim's water course, which is the river Mandovi, as you see in the picture, by tracing it upstream to its origin in the Western Ghats, particularly along the Dudhsagar Kandipar corridor. This journey is more than geographical, it is a narrative exploration into how rivers shape human lives and how, in turn, human activity has impacted these river ecosystems. Next slide, please. So, this is where Panjim gets its water from, which is the Opa Waterworks. Next one, please. So, yes, as I mentioned, this is where my project is on the website. Next one, please. Yes. So this initiative was brought together by multiple collaborators, as you can see. Along with me, I had Ria, who is an architect, Ria D'Souza, who is an architect, educator, and an artist herself. Then we also have Sanika Dakipalkar from Bookworm Goa's outreach team, art outreach team. She's an excellent artist. Then we also have Neeti Mahesh from the Foundation for Rivers and Ecosystem. And together we worked to bridge science, art, and local voices to envision these participatory conservation strategies. Next one, please. Yes. And to the icing on the cake was the Lokmanya Library of Kandepar, with whom we collaborated, where Bella, who's the librarian, brought us together with the community. She helped us build the bridge in between us. She helped us collaborate well with the community, where she brought the community together. Next one, please. So one of our core activities was having place-based engagement. So here we had conducted a plant walk where we walked along the river, which allowed us to observe the ecological conditions and listen to the lived experiences of the people who were directly impacted by the changes in river's health. So we met the locals who shared their information about what the river means to them, what the river does to them, what do they do with the river. These learning walks emphasized on observations, dialogues, and environmental awareness at the grassroots level. So we walked, we listened, we observed. There were children, there were adults, as you can see in the picture, who drew what the river means to them. They shared their stories. They shared how the rivers flooded during the monsoons. Like there was someone who shared about the water spirits and the different dreams and memories that they have with the river. Next one, please. So then, information that was collected, all these reflections were then translated into art. We made little booklets or zines. We made little booklets or zines where the children and adults participated, and Sanika led the zine making workshop where they drew, they wrote, and they expressed their relationship with the river. So whatever species were collected, whatever plants that were collected, they had imprints on these zines. They had the information about each plant. So each species had one, there was one zine per species, I would say, which had the imprints, the herbariums, the paintings, the information, the stories. If there were recipes, then even those were included. So all this knowledge was recorded in this. And next one. No, you skipped one slide. Previous? Yeah, yeah. No, the plant, where there are plants. Yes, this one. So after the plant work, what we did was we demonstrated herbarium making to the community. We threw light on how herbariums act as reference materials, which can be referred to help them with identification, appearance, and other features when the plant is not really, for example, if it is not flowering in that particular season, and if they want to identify it, herbariums are easier. So we made sure that these herbariums had that information. Next one, please. Next. Next one. Yes. Yes. So this here's a map which is handmade by Ria D'Souza, who's my collaborator, which highlights all the species that were recorded in the survey area. Next one. And this is how it appears on the website. So these number, so it's an interactive map on the website. So if you click on the number, it like Mansi, if you could show the next slide, then I can. If you click on the number, then it shows it gives the information about the plant, like what it is called in the local language, what are the uses, and where it was found during our survey. Yeah, next. We also conducted some interviews with the locals where they shared their stories. As I mentioned, their stories were recorded, where someone had to tell how did they do fishing during their times, and someone else said someone else shared about the medicinal plants that he's found along the banks of the river, which are endemic to that place. So these are most of the interviews are in Konkani, but they are transcribed so that it becomes easier for the audience. Next slide, please. And yes, so this is a visual summary, which is a collage of images, field notes, and creative expressions from our journey. It encapsulates the essence of collaboration, the voices, the diverse perspectives of the participants, and a purpose, which is to protect and preserve our river systems. In conclusion, the Dudhsagar Kandipar Chronicles illustrates that environmental conservation is not solely a scientific endeavor. It is a cultural, emotional, and it's deeply human. And thank you for listening to me. That's all
Thank you
from my
so
end.
Thank you, Alcina. That was lovely. And yes, like you said, when we segregate subjects academically, we forget that for the communities like you said, for whom it is a lived experience, it's all together. It's survival, it's culture, and that's coming across quite beautifully in the work that you've done. Um, so quickly, I'll move to our third speaker, Melanie Costa Pereira, who is a Goan artist from Lutolim, very deeply inspired by the rich heritage of the Kazan land, a very unique ecosystem man created in Goa, very unique to Goa. And she's trained in the old master's technique of watercolor art. So over to you, Melanie.
Thank you. I'll just share my presentation. Yeah, you can see it, right? Okay, so my project is called the Kazan Clay Chronicles, where we will be exploring the Kazans by using the Kazan itself as a medium. There's a strong focus on the Kazans being super ancient. They are about 3,000 years old, hence the old master's technique of exploration. This project, um, the land itself becomes the medium and the message. What are the Kazans? So the Kazans, they are an ancient community managed ecosystems where we can fish as well as grow rice, salt tolerant rice. But the thing about Kazans are they were created by the community around 3,000 years ago. And the most impressive part is that the bunds are about kilometers long, like kilometers long, and they are very intricate systems that manage the tidal flow. And with all our technology today, we could never. Modern day humans could never. It was so impressively done. Um, so Kazans have buns, and sluice gates. In this picture right here on the left is a rice field in the Kazan. In the middle, the two illustrations are this road. You see the road. That's where I'm standing, and I took the picture on the left while standing on the road, and I illustrated the road. The illustration above is just the field on the left of this picture. And if you go towards the right of the road, you see this beautiful bridge above the water body. My field interactions and research. On the left, you see the same field I showed above, this field on the left. This is the same field during harvest. Those are all the women of this village in Rashol collecting the rice. On the right is Eduardo. He's a farmer and he's standing above his sluice gate in Rashol. He spoke to me about how difficult it is now today to manage a Kazan because nobody cares anymore. The community itself seems to have forgotten its importance. And yeah, Eduardo is struggling to manage his Kazans. Below is Elsa Fernandez. She is the president of the Kazan Society of Goa. She was kind enough to let me interview her, and it's there on the website. And her interview is very insightful. It's about to rain super heavy, so I'm sorry if that affects the noise. The next, this is my process. Whatever I learned on the course of this, can you hear me? Whatever I've learned on the course of this project, as I was learning it, I took it down and I made little mini 7-page, 8-page mini dreams out of it, and I made a 4-part series. Aside from that, I collected soils from the Kazan. In this little box is laterite soil that I foraged from the bun. And on the right is the different stages of it turning from soil to watercolor. First, you crush it into little powder, and then you extract the pigment, and then I turn that pigment into watercolor. And I use that to create my body of art. The symbolism in the work, it's full of symbolism. It's the unprocessed nature. I forage from the land and I use the land itself to create art about the land. The unprocessed nature of this is significant because of the history of the place, the history of the Kazans, and to signify sustainability above everything else. Also, one thing that I learned while talking to the farmers and to Elsa and to the fishermen is the nature of Kazans is collaboration. We need to collaborate with the Kazans. So here, this is an illustration of my fellow mate, Ria Lopez. I used Ria as a subject in this work because it's on the right, because to signify the importance of collaboration. So it's significant that way. And I've used gold leaf gilding. I've gilded the artwork in gold leaf to signify the value of Kazans in our culture and to signify how sacred they are. Even though they are largely ignored right now, we don't realize how they're still integral to us in that they're protecting us from flooding and from tornadoes and whatnot. So the Kazans are like these natural guardians that protect us from natural disasters. Even though we have forgotten about them, they're still working to protect us. So the gold leaf is to signify how important and sacred it is. what I learned throughout. So here is this is the four-part mini zine series that I created on the Kazan. So these zines, I created them to give it out to the village. I gave it to school kids of the village, the Raya school kids, college kids in the Raya college, the farmers, the fishermen. I would sell them on the side to make money to print more to give it to them. I would sell four for 100 rupees or one for 20 rupees. And even though it's little, that little actually helped me a lot to print and give it out to the Kazan community. And they loved it. They loved it because they saw their own home in these zines, because every single Kazan illustration in this zine is from my village of Rashal. They love that. Um, yeah. And finally, the Kazan efforts are underway. I think my main reason of doing this project is, most importantly, is a lot of Goans ourselves don't know what a Kazan is, especially a young Goan. I met a Kazan farmer's son in the Kazan. People were harvesting rice, and I was like, "Oh, hey, this is your Kazan." He's like, "What?" He's like, "This is my field." I was like, "Oh, cool. Tell me more about this Kazan. I'm doing a project on it." And he looks at me dead in the eye and asks me, "What is a Kazan?" And it was his Kazan field. So that, and I gave him these beans, and hopefully he got into it. So that is one of the main reasons for this, which I hope to get out of this project, is people joining the conservation efforts. Um, yeah, so the impact, I want to reframe what I'm hoping is to reframe the Kazans as living archives of knowledge and potential rather than just a backdrop. It's like a living ecosystem. And like Ruchika said, another thing I noticed here is the lost education and knowledge from the elders that isn't in textbooks and whatnot. And that is super integral in restoring the Kazans. Also, like the literature on Kazans is like barely anything. I only found like one book written on the Kazans, and the only other literature is one paper written by Dr. Nandkumar Kamath. It's very, very, very little literature on the Kazans. Um, yeah. So I was hoping to bridge the gap with the arts. So that's my project. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Melanie. Actually, it's a wonderful effort because you're right. Even as we studied about Kazans, the papers on it are sparse and more scientific, and that's not a language that the common man or the layman outside of the academic and scientific world will understand or relate to. And it is really a beautiful system that looks so deceptively simple
Yes.
that without this colorful canvas that you've created, it may not even appeal to a regular person walking by. You just walk,
Yes.
maybe even go to a Kazan area and not realize what you're actually witnessing.
Yeah.
And thanks to efforts like yours that we're being able to bring it alive. And just to underscore the importance of Kazans, even our next speaker, Ria Lopez, has talking about the Kazans today and the connection with it. So I'll quickly move. It's a great segue to our next presentation. Ria is an ecologist, a researcher and storyteller, interested in rivers, maps, and most importantly, how humans and natures interact in shared landscapes. And her master's thesis was also in the Goa, Kazans of Goa. And again, she's loved this incredible system and the diversity in this current project that she did with Living Water Museum and Goa Water Stories showcases that. She currently works with Veditam India Foundation and is volunteering with the Amchi Molim campaign in Goa. So over to you, Ria.
Hi, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Is it visible?
While Ria is sharing, I have to just make a small protection announcement. Whoever has joined with the name SA, will you please write your full name as soon as possible? Otherwise, I'm sorry, but I may have to remove the participant. If you are hearing me, SA, please write your full name. Over to you, Ria.
Okay. Hi, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me on the
Thank you.
webinar to talk about this project that I got to be a part of under the Living Waters Museum and the Goa Water Stories, where I talked about the khazans of Shorao. Sorry. Like was introduced, I started my exploration of the khazans of Goa, specifically North Goa, as an ecologist, as a researcher, and I was doing my master's thesis trying to understand human-wildlife interactions in the khazans. And the khazans are really a fantastic place to do a study like this because there's lots of land use types, there's a lot of diversity, and all of these spaces are shared, not just in terms of the different types of uses on them, but there's also lots of different habitats created and lots of wildlife that occupies these spaces, which allows for a variety of interactions, experiences, and stories that I was able to collect over the course of my fieldwork. But I think we talked about it a little bit just before my talk, but academia has this tendency to make you condense a lot of these experiences and a lot of these stories into data and inferences, and it just somehow never felt like it did justice to what I had really experienced and the stories and experiences of people that I had spoken to. As part of the Living Waters project, I wanted to revisit and sort of re-explore one part of my study site, which was the Khazans of Shorao Island. But I wanted to do it now that I was out of academia with a slightly new approach, something more slow and conscious. And again, Shorao is a great place to do this, not just because I've always thought it was one of my favorite and most beautiful field sites, but also because the river around the island has such an impact on the land, and it's a tidal river, so it's constantly changing, and so the boundaries of this land are constantly changing and are shaped by the river. And the Khazans, in many ways, are actually a response to this changing river. So, in many ways, this waterscape, the landscape, and how all of the lives that occupy this island are really shaped by this constantly changing river, and everything that exists here kind of has to adapt to living there. The other reason I really wanted to focus on Chirao is because since the island is surrounded by water, it's also surrounded by khazans. And there's this main band that runs all around the island, which seemed like a really convenient way to sort of walk the periphery of the island and document the land and the water that surrounds it. So walking along the outer band, I tried to experience and document the way the space looked, the way it felt, the way it sounded, and the way people spoke about it. And I realized that obviously the Khazan still held so much life and so much beauty and so much knowledge, and all of this seemed to be working somehow in rhythm with the river. But at the same time, the island also felt really different, maybe because of the new way in which I was interacting with it, but also just because these are spaces that are heavily contested and very often converted and used for new purposes. And so there are spaces that are constantly changing. So parts of the island suddenly looked a lot more homogenized, where entire stretches of Band had been concretized. There were all these built up concrete areas and new ones being created constantly. There was a lot of abandoned and degraded Khazan land, much of which is now being overtaken by mangrove forests. Um, I also noticed that the way the river was being used seemed to be different. And all of this sort of sounded really different. You know, there was the sound of adventure sports and blaring party music from pleasure boats, or just a lot of the sound of vehicles going by, particularly on buns that had now been concretized and were motorable, or just this endless, exhausting sound of construction that seems to occur all around the island. Um, yeah. And yeah, so what I tried to do was to sort of map this walk around the island. And I tried to map the island through this documentation to show how amazing and important these spaces are, how they have been used traditionally, how they live with the river, but also how they're changing. And I think in some ways the exhibit is it's not just a walk around the island, but it's an invitation to actually walk along this river to experience these khazans, but to do it slowly, to do it thoughtfully, to really feel and listen and look around at this sort of abundance of life and value in this land and this water, but also to bear witness to how it's been changing. Um, because I think the big learning that I really took from the project, especially in contrast to with the ways I'd explored the island before, was that it's really through this sort of uh, very conscious, slowed down interaction with the space and really experiencing it. And more than anything, listening to people who've been interacting with and experiencing this space for a lot longer, sometimes generations, can we really understand a place and the value that it holds. And I think my hope is really that if we understand how valuable this land and these waters are, that we can maybe start to make better decisions about how to use it, how to govern it, how to protect it, and how to really live with it overall. Yeah, just a quick thank you to everyone who was involved in the project at different stages, starting from the time of my thesis till now. But mostly thank you so much to all of the people on the island, the farmers, the fishers, everyone who spoke to me and told me their stories, and also all of the wildlife on the island that very graciously showed up and taught me a lot about how the space is used as well. So this is a camera trap image from Shorao of a family of otters on the Band. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Riya. What a wonderful image to end with. Um, uh, I wish I have so many questions, and I'm sure people will be a little out of time. So I just have one question that I'll address to all of you, and maybe quickly you can give me an answer one by one in the order of who spoke. So we're all trying to educate, bring awareness, taking the stories of our land. But also, as you're this process, as educators, we also learn. And we've had the chance, a very rare chance, to interact with the community and their indigenous knowledge. So if you can just share with me, each one of you, one thing you learned from the community, their knowledge that transferred to you, either from the elders or anybody else, because you've done so much interaction with them. Minelli, we could start with you.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a
Please.
very quick.
I know. Just one little thing that you took home as, oh, I learned something.
Um, yeah, I think just the fact that there is so much love and so much respect for the environment and for, just the space that they live and inhabit. I think that's something that I'm taking away.
Lovely thought. Dalsina? Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I learned, or what my takeaways are, that I completely agree with what Minelli said, that they know how to live in harmony. They know how to be sustainable. Like, I remember in one of the interviews, a person who shared told me that how back then they've been doing sustainable fishing. Like, when people are talking now about being sustainable, I realize that we've been doing it since ages. So it's not a new concept. So that was one thing. Another is they don't need an outsider to come and tell them that they need to protect. They know how to protect their space.
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah,
you for
that's
sharing.
all.
Melanie, yeah.
So one thing that I kept hearing while listening to the farmers and the fishers and Elsa and Ria and everyone who knew had knowledge on the Kazans, one thing they kept saying, and I learned that one common thread was that we need to see this land, not as a backdrop, but more as a collaboration with it. That's how our ancestors did it, and that's the only way we can move to a sustainable future. To
Lovely.
collaborate with the Kazans, basically. Not They're not a backdrop scenery. They are living, breathing, and we need to work with it.
Okay, that's lovely. And to conclude, Ria, your learnings?
Yeah, I think I mean, I learned a lot, I think, from
One
people, but
thing.
because I was kind of talking about land, I think maybe one of the really big things that I learned was just new values that land can hold that we don't maybe always fully understand when we look at a space from outside, just how important land and water can be to shaping our identities and the way we feel about spaces around us. And I think also from that, how this sort of drastic change that we're seeing in a lot of landscapes can really sever our relationship with land and the way we care for land. I think that was one really big thing. And also just from what Melanie said about this idea of collaboration, I think one of the things that really stood out to me in the way individual people talk about the Khazans, people who actually interact with the space, they really think of it as a system. And there's this very inherent understanding of how each component of a Khazan impacts another. So how the river and the way the river moves impacts the ponds, impacts the land. Um, how what you do to the band actually impacts the land. And I think that sort of thinking of it as a system is something that uh, I just found so intrinsic and fascinating in the people that I spoke to, and was then maybe driven home by the fact that the way we manage and govern these lands is not at all with that outlook. And so I think that would be a really big learning that I think I took from it, was thinking about it as a system and then managing it the way um, it should be, and like protecting it as a system versus as individual sections. Yeah.
Very true and beautiful. And I think all of us, thanks to the Goa Water Stories project, have taken more than perhaps what we may have transmitted to others in our learning, just the whole process. So thank you so much to all our speakers. I'll just hand over with Mansi for the conclusion now.
It was not muting. Thank you so much. Probably I wanted to hear more and more and more. And uh, um, unfortunately, I must say, Goa Water Stories comes to an end. But I think it is also a great beginning to see how different people, different caregivers, caretakers of the planet, of the environment, of the water, of the community, of the biodiversity can really express what is good for the place, and also giving voice to those who could not speak, the khazans, the birds, the plants, and importantly, the vulnerable communities which are often unheard. So thank you so much for today as a presentation by Melanie, Minelli, Ria, Velsida. It's really great to hear you out, and we have been hearing all the Goa water stories for nearly five sessions now. And as I mentioned, it feels sad to bring an end to it, but I am so hopeful and excited that Goa Water Story also sets a tone for other cities to really see how a serious subject, how a concerning subject can be put forth in a very creative way, in a very collaborative way, which is the biggest learning for me as well when I heard all of you in the five sessions. And big thanks to Wensi, my friend, my bacha, and also my mentor, Sarah Ahmed, who really led this session to happen so wonderfully uh, as a series. But importantly, what we saw in the series is just a tip of the iceberg. And my apology to all our presenters for the five series. I am very much aware that 10 or 12 minutes are never going to be enough for the amount of work you have put in. But I hope you understand that the idea here is to bring your work to the larger world and larger audience, especially to the water sector, so that they can find more creative ways to talk about serious subjects. For me, that was the biggest fascination to Goa Water Stories when I looked at the compendium of your works. Thank you so much, Ruchika, for today's moderation. And I'm really looking at you and Ria, not only for Goa Water Stories, but also use you for other sessions as moderators, because we are constantly looking for young speakers to take charge at W for W and give me some retirement time or free time to just listen to all
Yeah,
of you.
pleasure.
Listening will be a great pleasure, and we have been listening at W for W. Personally, I have been listening for all the sessions. We are inching towards 400 sessions, making us one of the longest water conversation ever taken place in the world, by the way. And it is such a privilege to have all these young minds, young thinkers on board, and very interestingly today, all women on board to talk about Goa Water Stories. And so welcome aboard, but at the same time, I see a huge responsibility ahead of you, not only to convince your peer group, but also the future group to take on these kind of tasks and make the voiceless heard in the society. Thanks a lot. Before we close, I would also like to take the opportunity to announce what's coming up next. Next week, we are taking a short break online because we go on site tomorrow right away on a water walk at Sabarmati. And week after, we start on August 4th, where we have Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water. And we have Dr. Aditi Mukherjee from EMI to speak about her life journey in the water sector. That's what we do at Monday Munching Musing with Women for Water. And today, when I see all these girls here, I'm also tempted to invite them in a club format in Monday to talk about their water journey. Maybe I will write to them separately. The week of August 6th, which is Wednesdays for Water, we have our signature series session, and that is on nature-based solution series. And we are discussing harnessing nature through nature-based solutions to secure our ecological future. All this information will be available at our website, www.w4w.in, for more information. And we are continuously looking for speakers and good topics to talk about, and also to help us reach the mark of 400. That mark is not important, but important is the amount of knowledge we have gathered at one place, from art to film to deep science to deep sea as well. Thank you so much, all of you. Please take care, and we see each
Thank
other soon on
you.
other side of the
Thank you
Zoom.
very much, Mansi. Nice
Thanks.
to meet
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.